King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. So this is a storyline I've seen before. This is pretty much half the Moses story all over again, and half the Gladiator story all over again. Now, it's been many years since I read The Once and Future King, but this story barely follows the Arthurian legends at all, apart from a few names of characters and artifacts, and they do have a sword in the stone. The sword that Arthur pulls from the stone is often portrayed to be Excalibur in various movies, TV series, but I think that in the early legends, certainly in the Welsh versions, it is a different sword named Cilwch, if my pronunciation is anywhere near accurate, probably not, but oh well. In the original legends, which have been reworked and added to over the centuries, which has been evidence that King Arthur may not have existed in reality, at least not in any of the forms he's usually portrayed as, that he has always been a figure created for fiction and storytelling. Although there have been several archaeological expeditions and excavations to find the historical Arthur, some coming up with very interesting evidence and revelations. I'm not sure where it stands now, but Arthur was said to have been raised as a commoner as a boy. Sometimes as a page, I think, by the wizard Merlin. Merlin barely appears in this movie. I think like in one scene near the beginning or something. I had never heard the name Vortigern before. It turns out he was possibly a warlord or king in the 5th century. Another possibility is that the name may have merely been a title around the time for a warlord or king. I don't know. Again, this is the half Moses, half Gladiator story. The protagonist of this story has very little need to be Arthur. You could make him almost any other warrior, and it would barely affect the story at all. I also found it interesting that we barely got any reason, well, actually more obnoxious than interesting. We barely get any reason for why the people hate Vortigern. What is he doing that makes him such a bad king? It's kind of like in Game of Thrones, I forget which season or episode, but it's the line that the people don't care who sits on the throne. All they want is plentiful harvest, healthy children, a good, peaceful life. Of course, which they barely ever got at any point in history, but that's what they want. So why is Vortigern so bad? He deals in slaves. Okay, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but a very common practice throughout human history. Until white Western culture was the first to take a culture-wide morality stand against it. His soldiers are bullies and covered in black and gray, and you can't see their faces, so you don't have to actually question why they're so loyal, why they never question what they're doing, or why you have to rise up against them. Oh, I've never seen that before. While everyone is wearing at least somewhat ancient world-looking attire, although the technology and architecture is of a scale that did not exist in the ancient world, I guess you could say this is a magical, mythical version of the ancient world, but Vortigern is dressed almost like a modern-day lawyer, although that would justify writing him as the villain. This movie did not get very good ratings and reviews. I saw a couple that thought highly of it. The problem is we've seen this kind of movie over and over, and fans of adventure fantasy, movies based on traditional legends, and myths that have established stories of their own, I think people are starting to want to see adaptations truer to the original mythos again. And we're wanting movies and series that challenge us and make us think and question things. This movie does not do that. It's not quite as bad as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I was going to do a review on, but I can't. My younger brother and I went to see that movie about a week before we saw this. That movie has nothing but flashiness going for it. This has at least some grittiness, and everyone's not making fun of each other every other line. But filmmakers can't just impress fans with epic skills and impossible to leave fight scenes anymore.